Desire to create bitterness in this conclave, and I will be happy to stand down as dean.
On our second to last movie night extravaganza episode before the 2025 Oscars, we are talking about Edward Berger's Conclave.
Let us pray that God will grant us a pope who doubts, and let him grant us a pope who sins and asks for forgiveness, and who carries on.
2 years ago, we were actually talking about Berger's last movie, the 2022 German remake of All Quiet on the Western Front. Berger is not German, he's Swiss and Austrian, and Conclave is mostly in English with some Italian sprinkled in there. Based on the 2016 novel by the British novelist Robert Harris, Conclave is a political thriller based on the papal election process, which is far more interesting and engrossing than that last sentence would lead you to believe. The College of Cardinals is a stand-in for the political battles that have been raging for a decade at least in both Europe and America. After the much beloved and hated liberal Pope dies suddenly, the battle to elect his successor is politically charged as different factions, and it's not just a liberal and reactionary or conservative faction. There's a moderate faction as well as an ultra-socially reactionary but culturally diverse faction, all battle it out to elect a papal leader they believe will move the Vatican in a direction that they want. Ralph Fiennes plays the dean, and kind of, I'd say, managerial fixer, Thomas Lawrence, who wanted to quit the church but was asked by the Pope to stay on, and Thomas comes to believe with the knowledge that he was going to die soon, so he could manage and lead the conclave. On the liberal side of things, Stanley Tucci plays the Pope's confidant and believed successor Aldo Bellini, a very liberal cardinal from the United States, who wants to continue the Pope's work liberalizing the church.
Tell them I stand for a common sense approach to such issues as gays and divorce. Tell them I stand for never returning to the days of the Latin liturgy or families of 10 children because mom and papa didn't know any better.
On the conservative side is the anti-pluralist, arch-reactionary Tedesco, who brings a kind of Vatican for the Italians ultranationalism and anti-Vatican II doctrine out, is clearly a stand-in for the far-right populist Donald Trump, Le Pen, Brexit, Giorgia Meloni archetype we've been seeing all over the world.
Ma dove I tuoi amici liberali hanno deciso di cancellare? The dead language. Senza Roma, senza la tradizione di Roma. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold.
In fact, every time someone said, "We can't let Tedesco in," my brain just substituted Trump.
If you want to canvass on my behalf, then make sure that my message is clear. I stand for everything that Tedesco does not.
The very liberal desire for pluralism has allowed a figure like Tedesco to constantly lambast the now-deceased Pope in the press, very much like a Trumpian figure, with, we can only assume from what he says in the movie, racist and bigoted outbursts.
Tu riesci a immaginare veramente un'alternativa?
The food of the gods. Yes. You know, absolutely the food of the gods.
On the moderate side, John Lithgow plays the sniveling and suspicious Canadian Cardinal Joseph Tremblay, who Thomas Lawrence comes to believe was fired by the Pope for some unknown reason right before the Pope died of a heart attack.
The report is mendacious. Then why did the Holy Father, in his last official act as Pope, ask you to resign?
He did no such thing as Monsignor Morales, who was at the meeting.
And yet Archbishop Wozniak insists the Holy Father...
The Holy Father, may his name be numbered among the high priests, was a sick man.
And finally, honestly an interesting character, I think, the Nigerian Cardinal, Joshua Ideme, played by Lucien Misamate, who would be the first African pope, at least since the 5th century, who represents a form of multiculturalism that's completely socially reactionary. Ideme is on record saying that gays should be put in prison. With Swipes taking the identity politics of it all, Bellini says, if he wins, you tell your constituents that we've elected the first African pope. Isabella Rosselini has a great supporting role as Sister Agnes, who is there to help put together the conclave.
Eminences, although we sisters are supposed to be invisible, God has nevertheless given us eyes and ears.
And Carlos Diaz plays Cardinal Vincent Benitez, a man who none of the other characters have ever heard of that appears suddenly and mysteriously. Filled with political intrigue, satire, and a searing indictment of power and the obvious failings of the men who seek power but must pretend to be unambitious. It's also clearly not anti-Catholic. Edward Berger himself is a Catholic. I mean, he's Swiss and Austrian. But the elephant in the room, that's mentioned frequently enough, this is the church that's barely weathered the sexual abuse scandals of the last couple of decades, adding to the tension in the Curia. And with a twist ending that I'm sure we'll discuss in this episode, but I won't spoil in the intro, so you can turn it off if you haven't seen it. It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Actor for Ralph Fiennes, Best Supporting Actress for Isabella Rossellini, Best Screenwriter for Peter Strawn, Best Original Score, Best Editing, Best Production Design, and Best Costume Design.
I am what God made me. And perhaps it is my difference that will make me more useful.
Before I introduce the panel, please like this video and subscribe to the Movie Night Extravaganza YouTube channel. Then hit that bell to get notified whenever we're streaming. Super chats are now open. If you have any pressing questions, send us a super chat, which helps me maintain the expenses for the show, for which I am obligated by the rules of the Geneva Convention to stop everything and ask the panel. Another way to help us out is to become a patron and give us money every month. In exchange, you get access to all of our after parties, bonus content, and we'll tell you even more movies we watched recently. Patreon.com/Movie Night Extra. We have a Movie Night Extravaganza Discord. There's an invite link in the episode description, and we have a Letterboxd HQ account. So those are 2 more places to follow along with us. Okay, let me introduce the illustrious panel. Conan Neutron is the host of Protonic Reversal, co-host of Movie Night Extravaganza, and the frontman for the band Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. You can check out his music and hopefully buy some at neutronfriends.bandcamp.com. Kristina Oakes is a co-host of Movie Night Extravaganza and a Twitch streamer. You can find her streaming at twitch.tv/Cosmopolitics. All of her social media accounts are also at Cosmopolitics. She's on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky, and even occasionally on Letterboxd. Lauren Chouinard is a writer and social media strategist who writes film reviews for Merry-Go-Round Magazine, is on Letterboxd at Lonely Goat Herd. Also check out Merry-Go-Round Magazine's Top 24 Films of 2024 feature, which is Lauren reviewing both Anora and Love Lies Bleeding. I, of course, am your host in the little red cap with the black robe, Cardinal Forrest Miller. You're a manager, so manage.
All right, there you go. Yeah.
Amazing.
Hey, Lauren, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Bitchy Pope time.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be back. Yes, I have to apologize in advance. So as many people know, I'm involved in the theater. And today we are performing Cabaret, a musical that has no relation to anything that's going on in our society currently. We're performing Cabaret in a 100-year-old building. So if I get a little laggy, it's because I'm dealing with the walls of the Vets Hall in Santa Cruz. But I am still happy to be here.
The MC is like one of my dream roles.
There you go.
Oh,
Yeah, you gotta get involved in theater, Kristina. You gotta do it. You gotta make the leap.
Fly out to Santa Cruz. I got a role for you.
Oh, hey! It's a foot in the door. It's a heel in the door.
Like we have a role for
Cabaret.
you. No, not the music. You have to lead this conclave.
Well, what was? Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, it was like Harley Quinn saying that she had the role of the hill in the Sound of Music. It's like, well, the hills are alive. It's the most important scene. What's important? Anyway, Conclave is pretty good.
I hear the hills even have eyes.
There you go. That's a sequel. I think Conclave is pretty good. This is a solid movie. Not to tip my hand, would be the most hilarious outcome if it won Best Picture for what I can assume is obvious reasons. Anyone who has seen it,
Guerrilla campaigning, let's go.
But this is a procedural. I love a good procedural, and anything that is just talented people who are acting, interacting with each other, and with strong dialogue. That's all very, very much my bag, and I think they're very much on display here.
We're gonna have a full month of different procedurals coming up in March, right? Like,
who likes courtroom drama?
Yes,
everybody, we're doing them. No, but this was a pleasant surprise because I kind of expected it to be. It's pretty stuffy, but I expected it to be stuffier and dull. Yes, and I hate to say, I was like, okay, it's probably going to be Oscar bait.
How exciting is finding the next Pope? How
Someone told me the concept. I'm like, that sounds terrible. I don't want to watch that. That's
all we know is smoke appears out of a chimney. That's about it.
Yeah, right.
You could do something like Angels and Demons, where they keep kidnapping the cardinals and murdering them or whatever. But that's really unless you want to get real, campy and annoying with it like that, like Dan Brown, I don't know how much. I don't know. I wasn't expecting this to be anything crazy. I was like, all right.
It does the palace intrigue thing well. It does that kind of. But I assume
Death of Stalin.
Sure. Ooh, absolutely. Yeah. That's a good one. That's a good one. Anything that has a lot of complicated internecine relationships and machinations and whatnot. And I think is it a slow starting movie? Yeah, you better believe it is. But I think it works, and I think it's enjoyable, and it's kind of nice to have something where it's like, yeah, that was enjoyable. That was a good movie, rather than just I hate that. I think that is a movie that should not exist, et cetera, et cetera. Lauren, what was your nice? Lauren, what was your Conclave take? How did you come to?
I was pleasantly surprised. I really, really wanted to because again, I was just like, what am I going to get out of a room of old white men talking? What am I going, what is going to be 2 hours being spent doing that is 2 hours longer than I would prefer. But I was so riveted. I got really attached to so many of these characters. I think this is Ray Fiennes' one of his best performances ever, and I'm already a huge fan of him. The music, we'll talk about the music, but yeah,
that could win Best Score.
I was so sweaty listening to the score.
Yeah, score's good.
I loved it.
And that's coming from someone who I'm very score skeptical. I'm if
you like
if Hans Zimmer has no haters, I am not alive anymore.
Yeah,
that kind of.
You like your All Quiet on the Western Front remix.
Well, I'm holding out hope.
Oh my gosh, bring it back!
I'm holding out hope for Hans Zimmer's new national anthem for Saudi Arabia. That's what I'm going to judge his career on.
There you go. No, but I think this is very well. This is like the old dude character actor Olympics, pretty much. Everybody is all these guys are great at doing stuff. It's oh, Lithgow's in it. I forgot about that. It's oh yeah, I totally gapped on it. And guess what? It's progressive because they allowed a woman in. There's Isabella Rosselini. So
Conan, I don't know.
She is the best at making photocopies of any actress I've ever seen.
I do love Isabella Rossellini, by the way.
I was riveted by those photocopies. Conan, I don't know how much you know about so the crystal bachette, the musical instrument that you play literally with wet hands. It plays a huge role on the score. Basically, you dip your hands in water, and then it's this huge kind of metal and metal contraption that works the same way as, I don't know, I was listening to the guy talking about it last night. I didn't know this until I was listening to it.
Wow.
But, so there's this huge contraption. You wet your hands literally, and then the water from your hands actually plays its own versions of the notes and of the score. And
yeah, I know that there was like a harmonica version. There's a whole like kind of they kind of showed like the 50s or something, right? There's a whole the Pierres. It was using musique concrete. It was what it was used in, but I wasn't aware that that's what this was. Nor have I that I'm aware of had I ever actually heard one in action. But how?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds
well
like it sounds like strings. This is just for our viewers. Which I'm sorry to our listeners.
You can throw a picture of it. Yeah, I don't even know what it looks like. Oh wow, that's wild.
I've seen that
Okay.
before.
So it has a I've never seen it, so I looked up the soundtrack. But you put see that it has the bowl for your hands, and you dump your hands in the water.
You know what? They use that in Solaris, the Tarkovsky Solaris. I think if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I think it's been used in a lot of scores. Like I don't think it's like it's one of those interesting instruments that like.
Maybe it's a Soderbergh one though. It's one of the Solari.
Very unique.
I haven't seen either one in a long time. No, that's super cool because it is a different kind of sound, and I think that's interesting because like you don't have like this is such a well set up movie. Like it's very well composed, and so therefore like your tension is it's dudes in a room most of the time. You know, then dudes in a room. Oh no, they're voting. Okay, well,
so it's
how do we make this tense?
2002 Solaris.
It was a Soderbergh one. Okay, cool. I remembered it was in a Solaris because I remember being like, what is that thing? And then I think I researched this instrument and then forgot it existed.
The Soderbergh Traffic has it in it.
Oh, so he really likes it then. He used it twice.
The black and white Testament of Orpheus, I guess.
Oh, word. Okay.
And Le Marche d'Empereur, de l'Empereur. The original soundtrack to March of the Penguins.
Oh, because that was French.
Crazy.
Okay, funny.
That's a crazy name for the. I was like, what is this? Napoleon? He's marching down.
That's the original French version.
Yeah, the Emperor Penguins.
That's funny. No, I love that. I think that's it gives it a unique vibe. Like it gives it a like you don't hear that in a way that modern day. I'm gonna go and say it. SpongeBob Poison Brains. When they hear the zither, only think of one thing, even if it's in the Third Man. But it doesn't have that like a larger cultural cachet of like, oh, that's that thing. Like if you hear banjo music, what's the first thing you think of? It's like, oh, Deliverance. It's like to this day, right? And that's apologies to the banjo players, but that's just the way it is. I think the music's very interesting. I think the score is super good. Was it nominated? I think it was nominated.
Yep, best
right?
original score as well.
It was nominated. I have it down as my pick to win best score.
Oh, word. Okay, cool. Yeah, I was gonna say I forgot kind of how hard it goes. I was like, oh, this is good. This is solid.
Yeah.
It was very like for scenes where men are folding paper and passing them. was very affecting. I really felt like much like the movie we talked about last year, it's like it was very, very affecting, just like in terms of keeping me on the edge of my seat and keeping that that pulse kind of going.
Yeah.
I think if it was any sort of like slower, more dirgy sounding music, the movie wouldn't have hit the way that it did. And actually, I was reading a little bit about the music and the use of harmonium that they used in it, which is really they didn't want to make the music sound too classical. And so they started using different types of instruments, and they used an instrument called the crystallophone.
That's what Forrest was just talking about when you were jumped off. Yeah,
how that works. But
which is crazy.
It sounded great.
And it was and it had also Soderbergh used it in Traffic and Solaris, his version of Solaris too. But it's not something we've heard a million times. Yeah. So that's what makes it interesting.
By the way, the guy, I guess he goes by Hauschka. The guy that did the score, he won. I couldn't remember if he did. So he won the Oscar for the wah, wah, wah.
Which is I remember that. We all remember very well. And I I actually looked at my picks, and I actually have it down as my want to win for best score. But I think what will win is The Brutalist, which is wah 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 wah, which is hilarious because they could be cousins.
I feel like
That's
maybe
so
watching
true.
The Brutalist, I got like kind of flashbacks to the like. I was like, where do I know it? And it was like, I was like, oh, the fucking All Quiet on the Western Front. Wah, wah,
Yeah.
What's funny is I actually like the Brutalist one better, and it's like it's practically the same goddamn thing. But I actually like the Brutalist one a little better. But
it was just crazy to watch people go through the trenches, and it's like clearly like everything is pitch perfect for like 1914, 1915, 1917, and then just here wah 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 wah.
I mean, it's
my man's listening to dubstep in the trenches or something.
But I think and I mean, and we did a whole episode on All Quiet on the Western Front if people want to check it out because we do go in depth. But I think that's just a decision, right?
Literally
and that's
2 years ago today. We did an episode.
Was it today? Oh man!
Or
Yeah.
actually, I think technically yesterday, but yeah.
Years
in the
ago,
same-
I was there.
awesome. That's
Yeah.
right. You were.
Lauren was our guest for it. Yeah.
That's right.
I was
remember.
like this.
That's right.
And
Dance
that's why we
remix.
were
I should have brought down the. I can bring it for the after party.
That's why you're also so ready to go with your dance remix and like.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't have one for this. I'm sorry. I've been very busy.
No, I meant by the time we got to the Oscars because we already had the wah 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 joke down. Like
I need to remix The Brutalist. Well, speaking as a former Catholic, I found this film to be rather interesting. A little history about myself. I attended CCD class, but I quit after like the first year because I just stayed for the candy and the Veggie Tales. I wasn't gonna get communion and all that shit. I could ask you questions. I was like, yo, if Adam and Eve have kids, you know, their sons, like, how are we all descendants for Adam and Eve? And how are people living to be like a couple hundred years old? And they would be like, Kristina, now's not the time to ask questions.
See, I don't know why in my head I always the Veggie Tales thing I always think of like Protestant and like evangelical types. Like for some reason it didn't connect in my head that because
there's religious vegetables. What is this? What I don't understand.
Veggie Tales. Yeah, it's a cartoon that tells biblical stories.
It's like the CGI fucking cartoon, and they're all biblical stories, but they're all told by vegetables.
Yep.
And it's for like little kids.
Yep.
By the
It
time
was like really big in the evangelical spaces, but the Catholics
that's
caught
what
on.
I did.
Yeah.
All right. Well.
Yeah, we caught on. And it was
There you
funny
go.
too.
By
My
the
sister's
time I
the
saw
only
Veggie Tales-
grandkid who got all of her stuff done, like for being like a Catholic, and I'm like, I knew in my heart I was atheist when I was like 7 or 8 years old.
What is CCD? I don't understand what that is.
CCD is like the first step for young Catholic kids to attend like religious classes so they can get like to like their communion. Eventually, they have to attend like a few years of it.
So that's like for they put kids in like a course to teach them how to.
Yeah, it's like a Sunday school. That's like when your parents are in, doing their mass or whatever in the Catholic Church. We're in the classrooms learning about like others, the stuff for like that's age appropriate.
Vegetables that are apparently have feelings and eyes. I'm looking at pictures now. Yeah,
yeah,
that's not creepy at all.
Like, I didn't even think of.
But I got bored and tired of it. I'm like, this is not for me. Put me on stage.
Made in God's own image.
God's a cucumber.
Religion's weird to me. I'm sorry. Like I have no frame of reference.
So my mom grew up like intensely strict, like Tedesco style Catholic, right? Like the Latin liturgy and like she grew up on like the tail end of that, and her family was so Catholic that she had to like almost when people leave cults and they have to like de-radicalize kind of.
Yeah.
So my mom had to de-radicalize essentially from Catholicism. So we started going to an Episcopal church, which I guess we had our own Reformation or whatever. But when I was like I don't know, we like moved here, and when I was I think like I don't know like 9 or 10, we started going to like an Episcopal church, and I was like their version of like an altar boy and everything there. But like it was kind of because my dad wasn't religious at all, and my mom was like super religious growing up, so we kind of had to like take a middle ground for a while until she could like stop going to church. And it was like a thing that like she still I think has problems with.
Yeah.
By the way, imagine this being the last thing you see as you're pushed off a ledge.
Oh God.
I'd be like oh Veggie Tales was right. Veggie Tales was right, and I lived my life as an heathen atheist and was wrong. All right.
Yeah, whoops, my bad. Embarrassing. But anyway, yeah.
The major thing that I remember about Catholicism growing up is watching the I Love the 80s series, and they talk about that assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II and how he forgave the guy who tried to kill him.
Yeah,
the
that's
Pope
right.
Mobile had a glass thing around it. And then I remember April 2nd, 2005, because that's when Pope John Paul died. I was at a Chili's, and we were eating food.
I feel God in this Chili's tonight.
All the TVs had like the news about Pope John Paul II's like death, and I'm eating. I'm like, oh, what happens next? And my Uma's, God rest her soul, she was like, well, there's gonna be a new Pope, Kristina. I'm like, oh, cool.
Which apparently the idea in this for, I mean, some of the idea is that Pope John Paul II was the first Pope that had like very close confidants who were like Black, like Africans, right? Like from South Africa and from, so the idea in this of, and you know, I think they were a lot more reluctant than the kind of bombastic, almost dictatorial African figure that we get in this, which has a lot more to do with Uganda and the evangelical movement. You know, that character, I think,
which is a very real thing. Yeah, and that's that reminds me, just in the comments, Radio Leonel, as a student of libertarian theology and Catholic school doctrine, this one really did well at looking at the micro civil wars going on in Catholicism. It's always like this,
and
crazy.
Completely reflected in, I think, our modern like culture war, right? Like, I mean, I kind of hate that term because I feel like it kind of marginalizes some very important issues, but essentially that's what it is. I mean, you can see even like something like the Latin liturgy as a flashpoint within Catholicism, as a symbolic flashpoint. That's like you can look at that the same way as like, you know, brands going after each other, or like the language we talk about things in, right? Like it's what's essentially a dead language, but like I love the scene where Tedesco explodes. He goes, "A dead language," and he's like, but like you really had to go to church, you know, before Vatican II. You know, the sequel, you know, you really had to go to church and like the whole thing was in Latin, and it's like if you don't speak Latin, which I think a lot of people kind of
but most people don't unless they're time travelers.
No.
Throw it out there. It's wild, and so it's interesting that you know, he has the rights and all of the procedures and whatnot happening here, but it isn't just strictly as it would be 600 years ago or something along those lines. You also have, you know, these very modern doors and like door locking systems with like card keys and stuff like that. And I like the balance of that, because of course there's going to be, it's going to be traditional up to a certain point, but also there's like, you know, some technology there as well, which I assume actually happens in the Vatican as also. But I thought that was kind of a nice touch. That it's like, oh yeah, no, this is modern times, because it's very much this is a political movie, very political movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny is I watched this to kind of like, I got to get away from these election results, and I was like, all right.
Well, it makes me wonder, like, what the hell the Conclave was thinking when they elected, you know, Pope Benedict. Like, to me, he was like, first of all, he was Hitler Youth.
Yeah.
Pause real quick. Izzy from React Channel, thank you so much for the raid. Let me do a little Raiders. Welcome in. AKA your own Cosmopolitics. I stream politics, pop culture from left wing perspective. We chill, we chat, we react. We're going over the Oscar nominated film Conclave. And Izzy, if you're still in here, you're more than welcome to come on the podcast. I'll message you.
There you go. It's a back end announce. Well,
like, what were they thinking? Like, because Pope Benedict, he was Hitler Youth. He was the most very like glamorous type of Pope. He wasn't a simpleton type of guy. And he was more than willing to cover up the, you know, molestation.
But that was a reaction to the other guy, though, right? Like, they kind of went the other way, like how, you know, Trump is a reaction to Obama, where it's like, oh, we're going to go the other way now. We're gonna break the reactionaries off.
And it did not last, and it was not very popular. He was not a very popular Pope.
Yeah, I mean, he's popular among certain people, but
but yeah, so there was a like one of the people that was like you know, the first, and I think kind of, well, I guess not only time, because there was another time where like when Pope Francis was elected, this was also the case, but one of the closest friends of, or the closest confidants of Pope John Paul II was like an African an African archbishop. I can't remember which country. It wasn't Nigeria, but I think it was South Africa, I want to say. But so the first time that they were really speculating, oh, could we have an African pope, was the death of Pope John Paul II. And then, of course, nobody voted for that. Everybody either voted for, you know, they voted for all the white people.
Yeah.
And then,
voted for the Hitler Youth.
Well, and that comes back to the whole, oh, well, not this cycle. It's people aren't ready for a woman president. It's like, whatever, it doesn't matter like what it is. Like the politics for it apply. And that's one of the reasons why I liked it, because I don't have much knowledge of the Catholic Church other than the obvious things, or any stake in it. But I think it drew me in very well and kind of told you what you needed to know if you don't know in the course of the movie, which was, I think, important. And people forget about that when it's something that's, I was about to call it a niche interest, which would probably get the Anti-Catholic Defamation League on our tails. But for me, it's a niche interest. It's absolutely not a niche interest.
Yeah, well, I feel like sometimes it feels like a niche interest because, and we see it discussed so much in the film about, people are trying to appeal more to mass audiences because there has been a mass exodus of people from the Catholic Church. And so that's why we get our current book saying things like gays are cool now, and you can breastfeed your kids in church, and it's so people are like, oh, he's the cool Pope. But he's still
skateboards. Go ahead, breastfeed your kids in the church.
He's still kind of a very, very old, archaic institution, but he's putting rainbow stickers on it now. So it's he's look, we're super cool.
Yeah,
and that's what
rainbow
makes
capitalism
character so
rainbow Catholicism.
Yeah, exactly. That's
rainbow Catholicism. There you go.
Because he's just he's very much trying to be progressive in his views, while also trying to appease all of the people around him because he still has to be likable.
Right. Yeah. And that's why I liked Stanley Tucci's character so much too, because there's that great scene where it's the Tooch is loose. Because the scene was well, hey, if you're gonna vote for me, make sure that that I'm standing for all of these things, and these guys stand for all things these guys stand for is what I'm against. And it's such a it's like a laundry list of here's all the problems people have with this church, and this guy would be the most progressive outcome you possibly could have, but it's he just wants to put it all out there because he's not interested in placating the reactionary wing.
Yeah. And it just hits so much harder after the 2024 election too.
I know.
Yeah. And it's it's nice to see liberals staking out a position.
But I think that's so cool, and I love his interactions, him and Ralph Fiennes' interactions together too, because they have such a great back and forth that in a way they're both flawed in different ways. And it's one of those things if you could just take the best parts of either of these guys, you could have a guy that could be elected pope, but you can't do that. But then by the same token, for me, it's very much those who seek power probably shouldn't have it.
Yeah.
Kind of allegory as well, which is not a new sentiment, but boy, is it well articulated here. Because again, the identitarian pick is oh no, that guy's the reason why he gets disqualified. Spoiler alert, is not the reason why he sucks. Yeah. But it is. He's disqualified maybe for the wrong reasons, but at least he's disqualified. So that's
yeah. I mean, and I love that they actually address the the big elephant in the room, the big sex scandals, and they're like, no, the Curia now is so sensitive to any allegation of sexual impropriety that would come to the surface during this that it's such a it's heartbreaking, but at the same time you're like, this guy sucks and he should
but you feel empathy for him. You're like, wait a minute, this guy's horrible. Why am I feeling empathy for he lost his dream? And it's well, I guess that's sad, but this is the best outcome for everybody.
When he puts his hand in, he's like, there is no hope, and it's he's I feel bad for this guy, and it's oh yeah, he wants to throw gays into prison.
Yeah, he wants gays to literally be thrown to prison. Yeah. Other than that, it's well.
One more historical flashpoint though. The years of lead in Italy during the 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s, where in collusion with the Vatican, the right wing parties that were kind of reforming after the whole fascism thing. Began these operations like Gladio with the CIA and the Vatican, all within this unit to bomb parts of Rome, and they blamed it on the left wing. But everybody found out later that it was right wing antagonists. But there was this constant tension between right and left, and these bombs would go off constantly, either in the Vatican or in the streets of Rome, or people would blow themselves up. that feels like it's very present in these culture wars, but then taken for like the 21st century or whatever, where it's like, they have the whole Islam thing and like then these are actually Muslim bombs, but like you could imagine that it could be the fucking Tedesco guy or whatever trying to make sure that not him specifically, but like the reactionary wing of like
the analog to what that is.
Yeah.
Abby saying, "I love what messy bitches these guys were." Yes, absolutely. That's
also too at that time there was also a lot of sentiment going around about how the Catholic Church was not good. Like a lot of young folks were being very disenfranchised and just not in with the church, and there was a lot of uproar and protests going on around that same time too, especially like in the 70s, like in Italy and all that. Mm-hmm. So it was interesting to see just how it took popes come and go, but it's interesting to see how every so often there is an uproar against Catholicism.
Well, and I think that's when you talk about this one being more progressive or that one, and like bringing people into the church, that's what they're talking about. Is the I overuse the children of men analogy, but they don't want it just to be children of men where there's no new people coming into it. Otherwise, there's no congratulations, your religion's roasted. It's a cornerstone of history, but it's it's not as an active thing. It's not there. So of course you have to change somewhat, or people are just they're not gonna. It's not going to be of interest unless it's traditionalists, and there aren't enough of them.
Yeah. Well, so also at a time when it's like, pretty unpopular. I mean, these are not like proven theories. It's still a conspiracy theory, which is where I thought this movie was going with it in the beginning. Pope John Paul I, right? Instead of Pope John Paul II, who was the liberal when we were younger. He died 33 days into his tenure. Yep. And just suddenly. And there's a lot of pretty convincing theories that he was poisoned because he had a lot of ideas about where the Vatican Bank should actually be putting money into like different things to try to like liberalize things that were going on in the Vatican, and then suddenly he he's found in his room like face down like Stalin or something. Right. They were like, oh, it was a stroke, but there's some pretty convincing like theories that either he was either coerced into killing himself or was poisoned. Like I mean those things will always flow around, I guess. But
I think he had like the shortest term for a pope.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. At least in modern times.
Yeah.
Lauren, what do you think about the politics of it all? Like the political factions within? Do you think they're represented well here?
It's very interesting because I kind of like what I was talking about before with like just people want to market, a religion is a marketable thing just like anything else, just like soda and cigarettes. But so I feel like the way that they showed the different ways that people are trying to work together to try and come to a consensus. Obviously, there is like going to be breakdowns along the way, and I just loved the casual little side comments. Like they were just saying, it's like I love how like bitchy, all are, because that's just how it is. It's like it's at the end of the day, we all seek validation of our worldview. And I love that the film kind of highlights that it's like the people that want the power the most, like you were saying, are the ones that probably shouldn't have it. And, even if you try to like maneuver around things, like there's no cutting corners because Vatican City, it's real small and people are talking. And I love that it didn't go into a big conspiracy thing. Yeah, I like that it didn't go into a big conspiracy thing or some sort of like crime thriller like direction. I like that it was the normal mistakes that all politicians make trying to appease a larger audience, and just like, and it's the reality of the situation when you're navigating any large organization. And trying to market yourself within that organization that actually really like worked for me, rather than it being like, I don't know, some sort of like, oh, what are they going to find behind the walls? And blah, blah,
was it going to be a body or whatever? I expected that. I expected there'd be some kind of, Chekhov's gun introduction, where it's like, oh, it's this.
I mean,
he killed a kid, or
it's the
whatever.
Dan-donification of our minds, right? Like,
I guess so.
Like, there always has to be something deeper. But yeah,
no, they're just flawed human beings that are all vying for power. That's it.
I like even the naked politicization of vote counting, which is something that happens constantly, like in our Congress, right? Like both in the House and the Senate. Like there's people that are very good vote counters, and in this they actually showed that process with like each person like literally having a pencil marking down how many, and then trying to trade their votes for things, or trying to change their things, or in the case of the John Lithgow character, who excellently portrayed in like such a sniveling character, right? Like like the whole claim of simony, where he's just paying people off to vote for him, that gets like explosively revealed.
Isn't it cool? There's a specific term for that too. Love
that. I know. I loved that, because at first I was like, "What is this lobbying?"
Like,
and then they said, I was like, "Oh, nice."
By the way, I was thinking of Mpongo. That's the one I was thinking of.
There were two possible African candidates for the papacy: Mpongo from the DR Congo,
right.
and Turkson from Ghana. Interesting. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think Mpongo was the one that was very close to Pope John Paul II.
Nice.
I was just reading about that last night. That's fresh in my mind.
Well, but it's cool too. Yeah, Lithgow's character is great because he's so conniving and just so like, even when when he talks about they have that great face off, Ralph Fiennes and they have that great face off. He's like, oh well, of course you're bringing this up because you think it's going to be you, basically. But he goes around saying it so eloquently that it's like, all right, I see what this is. This is like an intimidation tactic, but in like the passive aggressive sort of backroom way. And it's I love that.
He does it with such and John Lithgow is obviously such an amazing actor, but like the way that he does it is like he's freaking out, and then all of a sudden there's this eerie calm where he's like, you better, it's been said around that you're looking pretty ambitious right now.
right. People are talking about this more and more, actually.
That's one thing that will cut this guy deep to his core, right? Like the image of impropriety that comes with being both the neoliberal managerial fixer of all things.
Well, because it undercuts his authority and his identity. Yeah. Right, because he talks about like the whole. It's so key, like the line where he talks about some are shepherds and some are managers of the farm, and it's like and it's like, oh, and that's sort of like what he's like considered his lot in life then, and so the fact that like he doesn't even seem to believe that it could be him, even when people start voting for him, and then like he kind of was like, well, but what if I did?
Which is such a now thing, right? Like our society is constantly like people really do consider themselves managers rather than even leaders at this point, right? Like I think even more in Europe, like a lot of people are more openly like, I'm going to be a competent manager for this society.
Even as he's actually a very good leader. If you look at what he's doing, he's a very good leader, which is hilarious.
There's a scene where you really realize that, I think, where well, first I like that they cue this up with the Idembe guy. They like the ultra reactionary African archbishop, and he's in the hall and he's like, I hear the because when you're the dean, you have to do like the homily, right? Like you have to do the speech before the voting starts, and I like that he cue up the line like he says, I think I hear the trick is not to offend anybody, and then his homily that he stops after doing like the proper stuff, he gives this speech that goes off like a bombshell, one of many I guess in the room. And he gives like his insane, like not insane speech, but like he absolutely crushed it. The people were sharing like clips of Ralph Fiennes doing that speech as if it's like he like Dean Cardinal or whatever, like absolutely crushes it in speech, like
but I think that's, and you see such between that and like the really quiet moments we were talking about earlier too, like that's one of the reasons. Oh, very cool. That's one of the reasons why I think his performance as Lawrence is so well rounded, right? Because you get both of those. You get there's some very big moments in this movie and there's some very small moments in this movie, and you get to see both. And like I said, it is ironic that he doesn't seem to recognize his own worth or have faith in himself as a leader until he does, in which case then others lose it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's such a poignant thing that you brought up with, nobody wants to be seen to have ambition. And I think in our society, right? Like this is a society where
it's unseemly.
Yeah.
We live in a society.
I mean, especially like in a republic, right? Like 'cause we have these lofty kind of ideas about like Cincinnatus, like George Washington, like they go back to their farm or whatever, and they after the war, and they don't want to lead actually, and like every president has taken George Washington for their basically for their model, where it's like, oh, I don't actually want to lead anything. I want to go home. I don't actually want to be president. That isn't.
I'd rather be working on my farm. Really? Really? Have you ever worked on a farm? Yeah. I'm sure you don't. Yeah.
And but the whole thing, I mean, and like Napoleon did this a bunch of times too, where you quit and you're like, I don't want to do this. I'm going home, and then everyone's like, please stay. We need you.
Just a little bit longer.
Yeah. But that's
the fake encore. It's like oh, I guess I could possibly do two more songs.
It's the iconic humble brag where you're like, I must go home, and they're like, please stay. You're like, well, the people want me to lead, but in this it hits so much different because like for the Vatican, for the Catholic Church to continue, right, and for people to have faith in leaders, they can't be seen as having ambition, like truly ambitious.
It's almost a disqualifier.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So they found. I think they found the perfect, space to have this conversation about power.
Yeah,
they're holding space.
They're holding space
for this conversation.
I'm holding space for the Lord God. He's coming back.
Yeah, exactly. my homie, the MF and God. I hesitate to throw it to you if you're not ready, Lauren. But how do you feel about Lawrence's Ralph Fiennes' portrayal? I mean, you gave some props earlier on, but what's your take on the bigger moments versus the smaller moments? Well, okay, there you go.
Aaron's being weird again.
We'll get a rain check on that.
I will say though, I don't remember really learning. I mean, I think I did remember learning like a bunch of different, the Cardinals, these whatever. They all gather around and they have their own picks.
Gather around the Cardinals. We do it.
Yes,
we do
gather
it
around. Gather around. And it's like, oh, they vote on who's likely to be the Pope, because I think Pope John Paul II was our Pope for like what 40.
It's a long time.
30 years. He's like the longest serving Pope in modern time, because they elected someone a little bit younger. Even Pope Francis was a little bit younger. Benedict was.
Can
a
I
little
tell
bit
you?
older.
I remember when the Pope bill came out, but I didn't understand why he needed it. I was like, oh, he just wanted a car. I guess he wanted a cool car. It's like, oh no, it's because someone wanted to kill him. Yeah. Oh, but I didn't. I mean, I had no frame of reference.
Well,
so.
he doesn't. I don't think Francis rides in the classic Pope mobile. He's like, hi.
John Paul did though, and that's who.
After what happened.
Well, I mean, his predecessor may or may not have gotten murdered. Like,
right.
Yeah.
the guy that had his same name, right? Like, even taking it out of the whole Vatican, right? Like, this is a classic story about power, and I think there's some overwrought Catholics, I guess, that have gotten. Some Catholics have really liked this movie, and I for good reason, right? Like, it makes Catholicism kind of look revitalized and modern in some ways.
See,
and then
look what we can do.
Check it out. Here's an update. The most recent Pope mobile from Mercedes-Benz is all electric. So there you go.
Oh, okay. We're saving we're saving the planet. Go Pope Francis.
Well, it's better than the last one that was driving around in a Volkswagen.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and also.
Wait, before just one last point to this. There's a whole thing where talking about Pope John Paul II, right? He was Polish, and there's been a long line of popes that have not been Italian, which this movie plays on really well with the bombastic ultra nationalist Tedesco.
It's been 40 years.
Yeah, but for a long time, it's like the Poles and the Italians were battling it out in the Vatican chamber for Italians being like, come on, it is our city, please give us an Italian pope. And it's like,
well, it's so I was going to mention is that specifically Pope John Paul, in the 80s, like the Reagan administration opened up diplomatic relations with the Vatican for the first time ever, and that actually more or less that was a huge contributing factor to the fall of the USSR, but it was seen also as a people that were very against the just Catholicism, but also against church and state being working too closely together.
Yeah.
There's a lot too, and then we could do a whole show just on that.
Yeah.
But
well, remember Kennedy?
But they were both against communism, so there you go for different reasons.
With Kennedy, a lot of people are like, "Oh my God, a Catholic president! He's going to take all of his like orders by the Pope," and I'm like, "No."
Well, even before that, right? The Roosevelt's basically, at least ideological mentor Al Smith was the first Catholic candidate to run, and literally the Ku Klux Klan gathered because he took his train all the way down to the South, like from New York, where he was our good governor, but all the way down to like Florida, and starting in Long Island, Suffolk County, Long Island, they started burning crosses along the side of his train route. And the big thing was what you think, Kristina, like a fear that if we had diplomatic relations with the Vatican, or if we had, if we allow the Pope or any kind of,
that would be under the thumb of the papal thumb, if you will.
Or the Pope will be controlling U.S. policy from Vatican City. And Kennedy, of course, as kind of one of the most secular, I would say, presidents we've had.
They're all secular.
At least in the sense of what he was doing in his private time, kind of dispelled that.
Look at LBJ too, man. You know, he was a piece of shit. He was
but he wasn't Catholic, right? Like, that's the thing. Like, no one's like, oh, I bet the Pope's going to be controlling LBJ.
Well, and it's interesting that like the whole plot line about him having an illegitimate child, right? Like they tried to do that to John Paul, like the communist Poland, and in that case it wasn't true. I mean, I only like looked into this because I was like, oh, I wonder if that actually happened. It's like, oh, well, they actually, it did. It was sort of like ripped from the headlines to a certain degree when dude wrote this book, which apparently the authors a whole thing.
Which the whole Pope Francis thing, right, is that he had a normal, well, not, I mean, let's say normal secular life, right? For a while. As just a guy before realizing that his vocation was in the priesthood. So the whole thing was like Pope Francis is, I mean, this was always implied, at least, was like a Pope that's fucked. Like, you know what I mean? Like he had girlfriends and he was working as a bouncer in Buenos Aires before joining the like
the badass Pope.
It feels like almost like an opening up of who's able to be Pope from that. I mean, although the fact that for a really long time, there were a lot of popes who had mistresses, wife, kids, like that was a normal thing for popes up until the modern era. They would just either have a secret family or they would just be like, look, I'm the Pope, you can't, like, my word is legion.
It's interesting.
By the way, there was a streak of Italian popes since 1503 to 1978. Italians say are still mad about having 3 non-Italians, which I mean, this movie plays on really well.
Anti-Italian discrimination at its finest.
They just have Pope Christopher Columbus the First.
Well, and I think all that's, and again, you don't have to know all of this history or know all these tidbits information to enjoy the movie, because it's all presented to you through these rich characters that again, everyone has their animus, their personal grievances, their predilections, so on and so on, and everyone isn't just sitting there announcing their actions, but they are in a way announcing their actions if you know how to read between the lines, which makes it great political intrigue. I love that kind of thing. Yeah. Even if I don't have a frame of reference for it, I think if that's done well, you shouldn't need it. Like you can figure out in the meat of the matter of with the movie.
I think there's always been a lot of tension between whether the Pope, like just going back centuries, is a political figure or a spiritual figure, right? Because for a long time,
the answer is yes.
Yeah, for a long time, right? Like the Vatican, like the Vatican's lands, like they were a political entity, and the Pope was the leader of those lands as well as being the spiritual leader. And then that kind of faded away when Italy. The Pope actually didn't want Italy to be because the popes lost a lot of power when Italy was consolidated into a nation. And then he kind of had some fascist popes, and then the Cold War, right? Like it's the Pope was very much a political figure because, like, everybody was a political figure that had any prominence in anywhere. It's like the Pope is thrown into this mix where it's it's like, well, you need to either make a peace with the Soviets, or you need to take a stand against communism, or everybody's kind of looking for
whatever it was,
any logical points, right? Like.
So what I noticed on rewatch, and I wonder if you two felt the same way, is that I feel like all of these things, which before our lifespans, right? These guys are acting as if it happened last week.
Yeah.
And it's because they live on this such a long timeline, and they have these long lives that are where they become very accustomed to power, and they look at things on this glacier-like timeline. That is something that you don't see represented very much, or at least within something that's grounded in reality, like not science fiction is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting to again, like you have the guy, the Italians need to have it needs to be an Italian in there. It's like, well, there's 3 non-Italians, dude. Like, like it's ever. So it's not exactly like it's, but again, they're looking at it like this is an aberration. That guy's as an aberration to be corrected, and it's something where they're looking at things at a longer scope of history. And I don't think we see that again in actual grounded fiction that isn't speculative or dealing in vampires or or whatnot, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's why there's a big like Catholic Church vampire thing too, right? Because it's like the same sort of situation.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's also like the
long
same
arcs of history and lifetimes.
Like Vatican II happened. There's a lot of Catholics so mad about the liberalization, I guess, of the Vatican Church, and all of that kind of stuff kind of happened around the same time that there was no more Italian popes, right? Like, or there hasn't been for 3 in a row. Which is like since the late 70s, which is crazy. Like, these popes last a long time. They're like,
they got long lives. They get access to the secret baby blood.
But it's funny to like think about it as like a nationalist struggle where it's like, well, since we stopped, like you put it together in your mind, like everything is kind of a nationalist struggle to some people, at least on the reactionary far right. It's like, well, things started going to pieces when we stopped letting Italians, who are like the real progenitors of this thing, this thing of ours, when we stopped letting the Italians run this thing, that's when things started falling apart. And it's like, I don't think that's why, but like you can see how a reactionary mind would take that idea and run with it, like the Tedesco character. Like, I mean, who really is he's a good stand-in. He's not in very many scenes, and he doesn't have that much screen time. His specter hangs over the story far more than he does as a character, which is kind of a fascinating.
Almost more than the deceased Pope in some ways, right? Yeah, like and that's guy. He's like a noted character actor, I think, right? He's that fellow. Like I don't really know him, but Sergio. Castellitto. He's been like a million things. Like
he's got one of those faces where it's like, he's a that guy type of.
Which we should also say he expertly hits a vape. Where things get really dramatic.
I'm so stoked that I saw this movie before that became a meme. Because I was like, did that guy just pull out a vape? Like what? Like it was so like hilarious. But like jarring, but also kind of was like, oh yeah, well, why not? I mean, it's happening now, right? Like it's not that hard to understand. I thought that was the vape. Yeah, vaping cardinal is it's a whole thing. But yeah, and I guess he's that guy Sergio Castellitto. He's a director as well. He's like an actor director. So he's directed a bunch of stuff. I haven't seen any of them, but I've seen him in a few things. He was in like one of those Narnia movies, apparently.
Oh yeah,
he was in Prince Caspian. So.
I think I'm getting papal interference because my internet just got weird for a second.
The Anti-Catholic Defamation League's after us.
Maybe
that's another thing. I keep joking about it, but like people were mad at this movie. But it's also like I feel like unless you're making Passion of the Christ or something, like they're gonna be mad that it's anti-Catholic.
Yeah, but a lot of it seems. It's anti-Italian discrimination. A lot of it seems very contrived, like their complaints about it.
Oh, really? You think?
Like, I was reading, like, I can't watch her because she, her voice and general demeanor just kind of throws me off, and her face and the starving of herself that she's been doing. But there's a long thing where Megyn Kelly was freaking out and like adding everybody that was in the movie and telling them to disavow it and like screaming about it.
Yeah.
Like, how do you get outraged about something? Like,
it's the process of how to elect a pope. I don't know. Like, it's a very simple movie.
Process story, right?
Yeah, there's a lot that goes down. Like, I don't know why this movie would be offensive to Catholics when this represents all of Catholicism in one movie. When it comes to
a lot of it's stuff that actually happened in history too, which is so funny.
I mean, I think anything with right now, while the American and European right wing are trying to like stamp out all mention of trans people, the twist that we get, right? The Pope is intersex, which is not the same thing as trans, and which is not the same thing as as like the biological element of it is a very different thing, I think. But like, I think just any reference to like a term like intersex in a movie, right? Or
well, it's going to throw off people that I think it's an older audience,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it's some of the people like maybe people that don't necessarily coming at it from a very progressive place. So it's something where it is a way to reach people. It's like, oh, that twist, and then people have to look at that and examine how they feel about it and why they feel that way about it. And that's, I think that's a great, and I guess it's in the writing, right? That's a great trick of the script. And the direction that some people don't think it's earned because it's kind of like a rush to the end for the last half hour. Some people just don't like the twist. There's that too. But I respected the choice to do it. I do think it's funny that, like, I actually have some of the same problems I have the complaints with the Brutalist. It's like, for a movie that's so patient and like it takes so long doing stuff, it kind of seems like we just kind of just a sprint near the end just to get to the end of it, huh? But okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
I wonder how much of that is the fact that they knew that maybe there were going to be people that were kind of upset about that as a twist to the end, or felt some type of way about it. Which it's in the book too, but like it's like, I mean, I'd assume a lot of people that are Catholic read the book, like, but at the end of the story, when he turns out to be intersex, like I wonder if they were just kind of nervous about that sequence of it. Which the guy, by the way, Carlos Diaz, I think I don't know if that's how exactly you pronounce it, but it's Diehz is his. So the actor that plays that character that becomes the Pope in the end, he's actually like an architect as well as being an actor, which I think is kind of fascinating. Like he's a famous Mexican architect and actor.
Really?
Yeah.
The guy that's
everybody has time to do both those things.
Wow,
as someone that was raised by an architect, like I can't imagine my dad having taken on any more, like a second career.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. He's I didn't know anything. He's one of the guys I was like, I didn't know anything about him. I was like, who's this guy? What's this guy?
Yeah, I mean, it was like, best known for Conclave, and pretty cool.
He's also one of the swaggiest men in recent. I think. Look at this guy. Look at his.
Oh,
look
hell
at
yeah!
Oh, look at that. All right.
Yeah.
Respect.
Yeah,
he has some like really fresh fits. I was looking at pictures.
Carlos, is it Diaz? Carlos Diaz.
Yeah, I was saying Diaz, but I think it might be. It's just I'm used to seeing Diaz like DIA.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. He was a working architect until 2020. Crazy. That's awesome. It's awesome. I just assumed that was like, because everyone else is like a character actor that, like Kristina was saying, is just that guy you've seen in every movie ever.
Yeah.
And I just assumed that was like, oh, I probably hadn't seen those movies this guy's in.
Yeah.
But no, he was actually like and how cool is it that he's a fresh face that seems familiar.
Yeah.
Right. And is brought in and is easily dropped into something that has been going on for forever. Like, just like the character. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Which, by the way, we can ask how he would pronounce this, but pronounce the name of Carlos Diaz. But also, fun fact: there's a particular American Catholic exception going on. The Church of the U.S. is at least twice as reactionary and bigoted as Europe's churches. Well, I mean,
no doubt.
I think you see. I mean, I think probably depending on where in Europe, but like you see that even with like the Archbishop of Milan or whatever, right? That's on the side of Stanley Tucci. That's like, how am I going to explain any of this stuff to my constituents, or like my parishioners or whatever, right? Like,
right.
Yeah.
And then
they actually changed the character from, apparently in the novel is Filipino, so they changed him to be Mexican because they like were, this guy's awesome, so they like changed the nationality of the character just to basically to have.
Well, also the Thomas Lawrence character is Italian in the novel.
And the casting director, Nina Gold, she did Rome and Game of Thrones and The Martian, a lot of the recent Star Wars stuff. So yeah, good on her, man. He's a find, because again, he looks immediately familiar, just like with all these master level character actors, right? That's amazing.
and you can tell he's like, he comes out of nowhere. He's this kind of mysterious. Like, I don't mean this in a ethnic sense. I mean this in like his aura kind of sense, right? Like you can tell there's something dark about him, and once you realize like the heaviness of where this guy has actually served, like then it hits you like, oh, this is like, because he says the Congo, Baghdad, and then Kabul, and like like those are like the most war torn areas, and and then you also realize like he's like quiet and like reserved, and the whole movie, I think, like with the Pope dying, you're like, oh, did something happen? Are you gonna find a body? Is he gonna be poisoned? And then this guy, you're like, is he gonna, and then the explosions start happening, and it's like, is this guy responsible for like this? Or like,
you're thinking like it's coming from a more violent and crazy place, because it's like, oh, if he's from these places, maybe he knows how to make IEDs. We don't know anything about him. Maybe like, and that
quiet over there, buddy.
I'm not saying that we're the audience for that type of thinking, but I'm saying older white men are the audience for this, and you can make of that what you will.
It's a dude's fuck movie, but make it Catholic.
Well, that maybe have certain predilections towards people that do not look like them, and then it plays with those expectations. And
Brokeback Masses. But like, I mean, but like you realize the heaviness that this guy brings to it is because of all the places that he's, and like he really sells it. All the places that he served, it's like, holy fucking shit. Like he has a clinic for sexual violence in the Congo, and he's like, that's his first thing. And then he has like he's in Kabul in the middle of like a American backed war zone, Baghdad, like you have to assume during the Iraq war. Like it's these crazy things, but everyone's like, the first thing they think is like, how many Catholics are there in Kabul? Which is like, well, if the American military is there.
Think of all the crap they want to cut out of U.S. aid. I'm like, do you realize how many like things that U.S. aid is funding that's probably like Catholic, religious, trying to help other like poor countries? Like, come on now, we're gonna cut that now.
I mean, I don't like U.S. aid, but yeah.
And apparently, by the way, in the book, apparently it was Baghdad, not Kabul. So that's Filipino and Baghdad. So it's 6 to 1, half dozen the other.
Yeah, they added a new city for him to visit.
Right, exactly. well, just make it different.
Wow, radio's got another good point. That's what's up. We got our Catholic in charge.
Although there's wing of the Latin American church that literally prayed for Francis to die.
Wow.
They used to be funded by you. Hey, see, it's a good thing I brought that up.
now USAID isn't funding anything because they cut. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't want to go into my feelings on USAID and this whole thing.
Yeah, let's keep it on topic.
It's literally going to end up in a 20-minute long rant. But when we do our political podcast, I'll get into complex feelings that I have about it. I don't know.
What about that? Like, is that in pectore thing? That's an interesting. It's almost like a secret recess appointment or something, right? It's like that's not something I was very familiar with. But I don't know anything about Catholicism. Well, I know some stuff about Catholicism.
So
I don't
in
know that much about it.
Is a Latin for in the breast/heart.
Well,
is a term, I guess that's the breastfeeding thing, huh? Is a term used in the Catholic Church for an action, decision, or document which is meant to be kept secret. It's most often used when there's a papal appointment to the College of Cardinals without a public announcement of the name of that cardinal. The Pope reserves that name to himself. The Italian language version of the phrase in petto is sometimes used. Geppetto. When the name of the new cardinal is announced or made public, it is sometimes said to be published. It would make a lot of sense that in a war zone where it literally is.
Yeah, they're gonna kill you for your religion.
Yeah, both sides, right? Like, I mean, because you have to imagine if he's going to like Baghdad with, Bush was talking about crusades again, both sides of this kind of conflict are talking in these fundamentalist religious terms, and it's like you probably don't want to be like the Archbishop of wherever that is. That both like groups of justifiably or not angered religious fundamentalists, and then the U.S. imperial military are going head to head.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea of secret cardinal is pretty awesome. I mean, that's like kind of like that's a cool That's a cool conceit for a story. But it's when it's played off, it's sort of like they're all like, oh, everyone's ready to, do their palace intrigue and they're ready to make their moves. And it's like, wait, who? What? Who's this guy? Why is this guy here? And like you don't think that much of it because he kind of lays back in the cut a little bit. And, and then like gradually as time goes on, you see him like, oh, there's votes for this dude that nobody seems to know. And then there's more and more of them. And I think it's done well and in a way that's, it's something that's in plain sight. And I think that's not something that you always see done well in these kinds of adult dramas, which I guess is what we'll call it.
Yeah. So Pope Paul VI before made was sending in pectore appointments into communist Czechoslovakia. That was one case of
okay.
And also into Vietnam. There's a Vietnamese one that he sent in there too. And then Pope John Paul II named 3 Kung Pin Mei of China, Bishop of Shanghai in the People's Republic of China, Marian Jaworski, who was one of his friends that I'll say where it is. That was born, I guess, in Ukraine. I don't know.
So it's a real thing. It's a thing that actually is okay. Yeah.
They send them into places. I mean, I guess specifically during the Cold War, where it's places that they would be. You might not want to publish that you're
right. It makes sense, right? I mean, it'll get you killed, literally be killed.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the turtles.
Oh yeah, I love turtles.
I love turtles. Turtles are great.
I used to have a pet turtle. His name was Bash. No, Dash. Oh. Yeah, Dash. Yeah, we made a little we got like a little like an old litter box and filled it with water, rocks, and stuff, and then we kept taking care of him, and then we forgot about him for one weekend, and he dried up and died.
Ooh, that's horrible.
I know.
we had 2 turtles that we really liked from that we got from Chinatown. My brother when we were kids, and then our neighbor who works for the DEC was like, "Oh, those are turtles you're not legally allowed to have." And then my mom freaked out. No, well, you can have a snapping turtle, I'm sure, but these were just tiny. I think they're just invasive, and I think we ended up letting them go into a stream or something because it's which is not. I don't know why we did that for invasive turtles, but he was like, it's illegal. You could get in a lot of trouble for these.
One day, my dad brought a big turtle home, and it kept looking at me and trying to move towards me. And I'm like, oh, I think it likes me.
And then it snapped.
No, it was just like a regular boxing turtle.
I always wanted a turtle. I've had a lot of pets and animals in my life over the years, but I've never had a turtle.
Turtles are cool. They're cool to have because they're very chill.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Yeah.
I guess, so it's interesting that, turtles have a lot of symbolism in different cultures, right?
And in Stephen King books?
Oh, certainly, yeah, absolutely. But in some of them consider them like a transformation and change. And some wisdom and age. Look at Never-Ending Story, right?
Wisdom and age, especially the bigger turtles, right? Our tortoises as well, because it's
Tortoise, yeah,
because they live for so long.
But I think it was interesting when you see Ralph Fiennes' character carry the turtle back towards the fountain at the end of the film. If you keep those kinds of ideas in mind, right? It's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Like him being the manager, caretaker, and how it all plays out. And and some turtle species have both male and female reproductive organs too. So there you go. Think of that what you want.
Yeah. I think there's something interesting about the political intrigue and the turtle's ability to jump back into its shell when you pick it up. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, the turtle I think is seen as a cautious force too, and it's this Pope definitely plotted out his moves. The chessboard was another good Bellini, Stanley Tucci has the chessboard, and he wants to take the pieces because he says the Pope was always 8 steps ahead, and of course that's Chekhov's chessboard.
Yeah, exactly. If a chessboard is introduced in the first act, it must show up at the end.
But the entire time, which is I think is in some ways is the most really you could see a liberal guy being that far ahead of everything else. It seems like it's always the most reactionary people that are playing everybody
I thought it was cool, again, not knowing that much about the internecine politics of this and how this even goes, that all I really knew about how they pick their leaders, you see the white smoke. If you see the white smoke, then they've picked a new pope. And I remember when I first heard that, I was like...
the white smoke and they pick a new pope.
And when I first heard that, I was like, what? like what? And then I was like, oh, because they've been doing this for centuries. Like this is something that they've been done for like a really long time. Right?
Again, I remember when they elected. Again, we were going out to dinner again, like Pope Benedict. I was like, white smoke, and my mom was like, that's how you know they got a new pope. I'm like, oh, it was like
if you see white smoke, you have a new pope.
Which I mean is they've been doing it for centuries, but it's such a spectacle made for media, right? Like.
But then also, like, you get to see that played out in the film of like the other side of that. Okay, there's they tie these together and they these things like make the style of what color the smoke is. Like it's okay, that's kind of cool. It was interesting seeing that, and just from and again like a casual observer, like not something I have any stake in. It was like, oh, that was cool. It was interesting to see that depicted. And done so artfully, and in a way that, like, when like the bomb hits, right? That's a great scene. Like, it looks amazing. Where you're like, oh wow, like, and again, you don't know, like, is this somebody's plan to get more votes? Like, what is this?
As someone that went on like a really deep, just a deep CIA and / like whatever rabbit hole, I guess, and like for a couple years there when we were first starting out the podcast, like that's what I was reading. Like I was like, oh, they're doing Years of Lead.
right, yeah.
But I have two things that I want to ask you guys about. One of them is the Isabella Rosselini performance, and I wanted to see what you guys thought.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to go first, Kristina? Go ahead.
Yes. This reminds me of a perfect supporting actress nominee and possible win, because this is when I think of a supporting like cast member, I think of like a scene like hers. Like she's there, it's quick, it's easy, she's gone. But it makes an impact. It's kind of like, I mean, there's been so many actresses and actors who've won Best Supporting for like 10 minutes or less because their impact in the scene was that good. And nowadays, it's almost like supporting is just co-lead now.
Well, yeah, especially this year. I mean,
God, yes.
Where it's like, look, I love Kieran Culkin in Real Pain, but is it really a supporting performance? Come on.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Like,
yeah.
But I think you're talking about like the Judd Hirsch kind of Ned Beatty style roles where it's like, oh no, the movie wouldn't be the same without them, but they're really not in it that much.
Yeah.
Alec Baldwin and Glenn Ross. It's like that's like a 12-minute scene, but you wouldn't, people have based their entire identities on it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
OSB closing.
She's never been nominated, right?
That's
Isabella
so
Rossellini. Isn't that crazy? So many amazing movies that she's been in.
She's the daughter of a directing legend and an acting legend. You would think, right? Who'd have thunk? Like, no.
That's wild. Blue Velvet. She wasn't nominated for Blue Velvet. Crazy. Insane.
she's milking it a little bit with the mentioning her parents in these interviews and stuff. Like
my parents, they were England.
Yeah, but like I think it's because she hasn't been nominated for anything, and they have snubbed her so many times. It's like,
well, I'm the daughter of two legends who were nominated for Oscars and awards, but her mother got ostracized for having an affair with her father. So
yeah, well, I saw the clip where she's talking to like on the red carpet to Mikey Madison. She's like, oh, were your parents actors or actresses? And I'm like, come on, they weren't. Like,
well, and also like, Ingrid Bergman is no slouch too. Like she's some of like the most, if you're an actual cinephile, some of the most iconic films of all time, right? I mean,
I also forget she was married to Martin Scorsese for a few years back.
Yeah. That was.
Yep. I mean,
I see her. I think David Lynch. I guess I don't.
Well, sure, because that's what. Yeah, but and she has a legacy, but she has a distinguished career on her own as a As a, what was that guy, that chick? I don't know. Like what was that? Like where it's like, oh yeah, it's her. I like her. She's cool. Like she showed up in Enemy. Our buddy Denis. Which is a weird movie, and it's she's the mom of was it Jake Gyllenhaal? I'm trying to remember who's in that. Anyone else see Enemy? Enemy, everybody.
Yeah.
It was Jake Gyllenhaal. Yeah, she's Jake Gyllenhaal's mom, and I remember like we were watching, like is that Isabella Rosselini? Like it was just kind of weird, but like it was like, oh, that's cool. Like she's doing a good job. And Sarah Gadon is in that too, who's
well, she even
I like her a lot.
She even like she's speaking of Alec Baldwin, Jack Donaghy's ex-wife in 30 Rock, and she popped up in
right, yeah,
episodes of 30 Rock. Like like there's an insane amount of places that she's like popped up, for a great film career. Like,
and I think that's one thing maybe Isabella's kind of like about. It's like, her mother is one of 4 actresses to only have received 3 Academy Awards, and Katharine Hepburn has the most with like, well, classic in that era has 4. So it's like, my parents are award winners. Why am I not?
Right.
Like,
I mean,
legends.
Her mom's turn in Casablanca is probably like one of the most iconic performances.
The great performances of all time,
and I'm not like, I think Isabella Rossellini is a great actress too, but like, I'm sure that it's a huge thing to like. I mean, her mom was playing Joan of Arc, like her mom, but like Casablanca is one of those, her scenes are going to be quoted until the end of time, which is
also,
as long as there are movies.
We love Isabella in Death Becomes Her. I am 72 years old. I forgot
about that. Yeah.
Everybody making
that one.
Was like, oh, we're just making like war propaganda. Like nobody's ever going to remember that this was, because there was so many movies about the war that was going on that were coming out, and it's like, no, that is one of the greatest movies of all time. But everybody wanted to get off of it and do like cooler war propaganda, and it's like, imagine if you had quit. Like, imagine if you had quit there. Like,
well, I'm trying to think of like, because as much as I do love Janet Leigh and Jamie Lee Curtis, I think that's a great legacy as well.
Also Gaslight, where the term comes from.
Right. But it's not like on the same level. Anyway, I if I remember correctly, I had her as my want to win for my picks for the Oscars. And I think you did too, Kristina. So, so we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I think, but it's not Scent of a Woman style where you're rewarding someone for the wrong movie, but it's going to be for the career. It's not going to be for the for the role.
Exactly. And that's why a lot of people still think Demi's going to win. It's just for the career, but you never know. I mean, it depends on who wins SAG at this point, because SAG ends up helping to really determine what goes around. And I'm like, okay, well, we'll see.
Laura definitely has all of the momentum right now, and that has led to people remembering, oh yeah, Mikey Madison is actually fantastic in this. So
thank God Amelia Perez crashed and burned so that Honora can rise from the ashes.
Which we should announce this right now.
Yep.
We are doing an after party. We're gonna have a stopwatch, I think, going or something like that. I'll throw it up online, and we're gonna in 10 minutes. Not in 10 minutes as in time-wise, but we're going to have 10-minute segments where we talk about all the movies that are up for picture.
Complete Unknown.
Yeah.
Amelia Perez,
Brutalist. I haven't seen I'm Still Here. I don't know if you guys have. I couldn't find it.
Nobody can see it, so we decided to take it off the docket. I mean, like I would love to see it, and I would love to talk about it, but I would have to be able to see it to talk about it.
Unknown, and then maybe some of the other movies that are up for other things that.
Oh, I saw the The Girl with the Needle.
So we're gonna have this. So after this show, we're gonna have a special where we talk about that as well as everything else, what's changed in the Oscars race, et cetera, and then of course, the last movie, the core trio, the last one we're gonna be covering is Sing Sing next week with Mackenzie Wilkes of Criterion Connection and Danger podcast. So
I adored that.
Yeah,
movie.
baby.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I think we all felt the same way.
Yeah.
So. But I think that So getting back on track with this, you said you had something else you wanted to get to before we.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm glad I wrote it down because I wouldn't have remembered. So this is kind of a
That's kind of how we feel as well. As long as Amelia Perez loses everything, I'm happy with any winner. Yeah. That's respect.
There's so this is kind of a 2-part kind of thing because I think it really comes to a head towards the end. But I wanted to
counter.
I wanted to ask you guys about the phrase war throughout this, right? Like, and it starts out with Bellini and Lawrence going back and forth, and he says it's a conclave, not a war. Which, hey, name of the movie.
Titular line.
It is a war, and you have to commit to a side. And then that motif, the war motif, comes up a lot, but towards the end, right? There's that scene that I did not pay as much attention to the first time, but the second time, it's just so excellent. where, I mean, first, you have the bombastic Tedesco Trump Italian Trumpy get up, and he's talking about Islam and how basically it's a religious war between Islam and Christianity or whatever, and we need to hold our ground against the and then that feels like it's so much of European and American politics right now.
Yeah, very blood and soil sort of sensibility.
But then you have the new Pope, and this is like his Cross of Gold William Jennings Bryan moment, I guess, where he stands up and he gives a speech about, he was like, you don't know anything about war. Like, war is devastating, and I've been through now, like, 3 places, the bloodiest places you can imagine, and like, this is not a war. These are ideas. These are people. We need to reach people. We need to be empathetic. We need to, and like, that's when he wins, a controversial victory, I guess. But I was just kind of struck by the term war and the way that it's used throughout this, and then the way that speech, I guess, completely crushes the notion of like, this is like, religious spiritual warfare. It's like, no, if you're gonna do a war, you have to do like a real war, and that's not
shooting war. Yeah, exactly, not a culture war. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's I don't think you have a movie without that.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you don't buy it that, like, why would this person nobody know be this consensus pick? And it's like, well, he met the moment. And that's something where I mean, I think it's very well deployed. And again, I do have some issues with the ending. I don't think it's. I think it's cool. I came around. I liked it better the second time around. The first time it was such a. Well, I saw it early on too, and I didn't read the book. Of course, I didn't read this book. Why would I read this book? It's not my vibe, right? But I was like, oh, huh, did not see that coming. But like, without the shock of it, I think it makes more sense now. And I think it's with Berger's kind of overall look of like, look, we're trying to talk about things in our modern society and politics without explicitly addressing that within the framework of politics, because nobody can talk about politics anymore. Everyone's so firmly ensconced in their own circles of confirmation bias that if you want to tell a story like this, you have to kind of hit it in an allegory. And I think it's actually done very well. And I think, I don't think it's the masterwork that some people seem to think it is, but I think it actually does that thing very effectively and in a way that, again, there's going to be some lots of people that maybe are not watching a lot of movies this year, are especially older dudes, are going to watch this, and they're going to have to reckon with that. And I think that's a good usage of art as a empathy machine.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's 100% on point. I wonder how much of it is just skittishness, like that they rushed to that ending. Just for the fact of like we've gotten really like, tearing down the church, completely tearing down the facade, right? Like
they still need like the Vatican's approval.
And like we still have to. I mean, Edward Berger is literally a Catholic. Like he's
Well, and they were going to protest it no matter what. Doesn't matter. They hated the book before there even was a movie. They were literally going to protest it no matter what. So.
Like how dare we?
I think it was kind of expertly done because it's not.
Oh
like
no, they're not going to like us. Yeah, well, of course they're not going to like you.
It's art.
There weren't like these. There weren't like the most reactionary, ultra crazy Catholics. Obviously, did protest it, but like there wasn't like these, not like it wasn't like a Da Vinci Code type situation or something.
I wonder. It's 120 minutes, like almost on the button, and I wonder if Berger was just trying to trying to hit the post on that and keep it because remember. Under All Quiet on the Western Front was like 227 or something, right? It was like
I know that for a fact because I watched interview, like I watched the Academy conversation with him and his editor, and the way they were talking about the editing, they really timed like everything on this movie was timed. So like they're like, oh, we want to give John Lithgow like 1 minute to like 1 minute in this edit to like the pacing was
to do his thing.
Yeah.
Well, and. I like this better than All Quiet on the Western Front.
Give us your best.
Me too.
Yeah.
Face.
Right. I think it's. I think it's a better movie.
So he's great.
He's great. And he always has been. But like I think that it's very well made, and I think that this is an example for me of, and I guess I could say there's final thoughts, but I'm thinking about it now, of it's somebody that is a skilled filmmaker, but who's taking criticism of one of the films and actually using that to grow and build. And you know what? Respect. And that makes me kind of, that puts it in a better light for me, you know, and again, and you know what? Hey, if your goal is let's make the movie shorter, I'm in.
Yep. Here we go.
But it's 120 minutes. That's great. You know, not only was it a great show, it's like, this is considering how slow it is, you're like, is this going to be like this the whole time at the beginning? Like, this is laboriously slow, but then, you know, it's like a boulder rolling down a hill. It starts picking up speed big time.
Yeah. I like this a lot more than I liked All Quiet on the Western Front. It was a tough fucking movie to get through. It was so bleak. Like there was just so much bleakness to that, and like it's All Quiet on the Western Front. Of course there is, but it's like, and then I was reading the book at the same time because I was like, that's a book that I've always wanted to read and felt like I should, and then never did.
It's a bit of a harsh joke. Yeah. All right, so Letterboxd is a place for movie lovers who congregate. It's a social media site where people can talk to each other about the movies they love, maybe the movies they didn't love, maybe the movies where they compared the characters to their favorite reality show. Who knows? Who could say? But the point of it is that everyone gets to have their say. It's a bottom-up democracy. Everyone gets to chime and opine about the different movies, not statisticals and Eberts of the world. And, of course, that is best expressed succinctly. You keep it short. You keep it tight. And you get potentially collected weekly for this bit, which I collect for the panel to put on screen and react to. These are the Letterboxd one-liners for Conclave. Let's go. Most diabolical vape hit of all time.
And just that actor, I don't think I've seen him in. I mean, maybe he's been in like the background of other stuff, but the way that when like right before his vape hit or whatever, where they're all like you know, the whole Curia is riled up, right? Like he's accusing John Lithgow, and he keeps 8 names, I guess, from the list that he doesn't want people to, you know, whatever, for whatever reason. I mean, that's never really explained. But then the guy's like, ha 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 ha. You know, that really great diabolical Italian guy laugh.
Yeah.
Oh, he's only been 2 short films, so yeah.
Oh wow, he's a newer.
Yep.
Sergio Castellitto? No, he's been in like 91 films. He's directed.
Oh no,
he's only directed a few movies.
Sorry, I thought we were looking at the photo of the guy.
This guy, that's the architect that like recently.
But yeah, that guy's been in a lot of films.
That guy is absolutely, he's an Italian that guy. He's an Italian that guy actor who's also directed a couple well-regarded movies as well.
Fortunata, Mafia Inc. and Romeo is a Juliet. Apparently that's he was in that. Is that trans Romeo and Juliet? What is this?
Sure. Yeah, why not? Why not? Good vape hit.
Yeah.
Divas in long dresses gossip with each other, trying to snatch a win. This is basically RuPaul's Drag Race.
Okay, I see it now. They walk that runway, showing off, do a performance. Yeah, I get it now.
Yeah. See? It all comes together.
Consider my wig snatched.
By the way, not a lot of thirst posting on this movie. Just gonna throw it out there. But
really?
Not a lot of thirst.
No posting. Lord Voldemort jokes, or
no. Well, there's plenty of those, but that's not thirst posting. That's.
I made one on Facebook. I said I knew Lord Voldemort was a Catholic.
There you go. There it is, folks. 2024 recipient of the Oppenheimer Cunty Diva Ensemble Award.
Oh yeah, we have it. Yeah, every year, man. Then we got to compare to Oppenheimer because everyone was in Oppenheimer, but Bradley Cooper.
Yeah.
keep Bradley Cooper out of this. And then they're like, he's like, hey, can I be a cardinal at least? No, get out of here, Bradley Cooper.
No, you can't.
You're gonna make this Oscar baity.
It's a hard pass. Indeed, made specifically to make your dad go, no way, and shuffle away with big thoughts in his head. I should have watched this with my dad.
Yeah.
See, I thought the same thing, but with like a grandparent, right? It's like,
yeah, same principle.
But then I watched it with my grandma, and she was like, I don't get it, and I was like,
well, so much of that dream. I'll tell you the tea if you tell me what flavor vape, Your Eminence.
I bet that guy's smoking like I don't know, like cotton candy vape or like
yeah, something like real.
He's smoking a wine flavored vape.
Wine, it's a Pinot Noir vape. Yeah, okay,
well,
great.
Like the wine flavored. It's like when people used to smoke the wine tip black and mild, but he's doing it with a vape.
That's good. Yeah, solid. Mm-hmm. How picking a movie with the homies feels sometimes.
especially like if you're like one of those, like if you own like a video store that has a lot of like old movies, some B movies, and you just sitting around with those guys, and it's just annoying, and they can't pick a film, and you're like, let's just pick this one we watched a billion times.
You start trying to discredit your friends' opinions on it.
I was gonna say, it's like producing this show.
You're finally like, hey, remember when you had that child out of wedlock and gave it away?
Too soon?
Too soon.
Drake, you were hiding your child.
More clicks than his high school cafeteria.
You got your jocks, you got your moderates, you got your fascists, you got your liberals, you got
Africans. One table of Africans. Well, no, but everybody like he had. I mean, they set it up that way so the guy could be racist and could just point at the Africans and go, "Look at this." Which I mean, he nailed that like racist European guy. Can you imagine this guy? It's the Pope, and then he like points to a table of Africans.
Yeah,
I was like, all right, we could have gotten
high key racism.
You being like that racist,
not even low key.
Like you don't have to point.
Absolutely. Turns out gossiping is better on the clock in every workplace.
Hell yeah.
It's from the very beginning too. Like everybody's immediately trying to undercut each other. They're like, oh, by the way, my last meeting with the Pope, I just have to tell you something. This thing happened, and it was kind of fucking crazy.
It's not what he told me. Oh, so the Pope saw this and decided to replicate it in real life? Yeah.
Pneumonia.
My favorite character was the cunty purple one who could not keep a secret for the life of him. Yeah. The cunty purple one, indeed.
I'm the cunty purple one.
Tag yourself. Yeah. Exactly. Those are the Letterboxd one-liners for Conclave, everybody. Please follow the show at Movie Night Extra for our Letterboxd HQ account, where sometimes, not recently, we are posting stories of all the great episodes that we do with 10 bonus content linked throughout. Going to be a whole lot of that coming up as well. We've been doing all these Oscar movies, so if you want to keep up, you can follow us on there.
Oscar Mayer movie month.
The dean of the Papal University. I blew that one, didn't I? And always Flacco over there, your host.
It's funny that there's so many Catholic universities, but just to be like Papal University. I'm the dean.
Yeah. The dean. Try to disprove it. You can't. He's watching all the stuff for this show. Much more.
I'm the in pectore dean of.
You can follow him at Always Flacco and see what he's up to on their good old Letterboxd. I am the Pope of Pizzazz at Conan Neutron. That's right, doing the highbrow, the midbrow, the populist fair Criterion Challenge.
Your Pope fit would go, like your Cardinal fit or whatever would go so hard.
Yeah. Wouldn't need to change that much, really.
You'd be like the first Cardinal to have sequins.
Yeah, long coats. Yeah, hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah. You kidding me? You can follow me.
He really wants to be the Pope.
I was like, no, he's just a musician. So follow me at Conan Neutron on Letterboxd. I got a bunch of stuff I'm finally getting around to. So come check me out there. Sister Kristina at Kristina down there is she's logging more stuff now, movies now more than ever. Logging stuff on Letterboxd. Follow her see her takes on all of the Oscar movies as well. So much more. All the movies.
My great Letterboxd one-liners.
Absolutely.
And a few of them are in depth. Like I watched the 66668 whatever. It's Tyler Perry directed it, and it's very like I hate how it was shot.
That's so my classmate from well, first in high school and then in college for a year. Ebony, like Ebony Obsidian, is like she's a big.
That's her. You know her?
Yeah.
That's
well,
like J.K. Rowling picking a name for someone who's of color, though.
Yeah. Well, she I don't know. She figured it. But yeah, with like 2013, we would like sit next to each other in our freshman like college film classes, and then she got cast in that If Beale Street Could Talk movie, and like her career just like blew the fuck up.
That was a good one. Yeah.
There you go.
Have her on for that one.
All right, can I please close down this bit? So I'll also follow at Lonely Goat Herd. That's our friend Lauren Chouinard. Of course, she's having internet problems tonight, and also overbooked because she's a very busy lady. She will be joining us on our Oscar live special on Sunday. So we're going to be broadcasting.
With her new feature BFF, Julia.
Julia.
Yes.
Who was on our Wicked episode. So that's going to be our party that's going to be simulcast with the Oscars. You don't believe me, nobody's saying anything of importance on that red carpet. Don't worry about it. Listen to us instead. So
except for what there.
Right. Exactly. You can watch it. That's fine. Don't listen to us. Listen to us.
I'm carrying Elon Musk's child, and then like, all the cameras just turn around to like some celebrity we've never even heard of.
So follow at Lonely Goat Herd. Lauren, one of my first Letterboxd buds, and it's a great account to follow. Let's hit it with the plugs. Hit that vape.
If you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe, and then hit the bell to get notified whenever we're streaming. And we'd humbly request that you watch the video to the end, because it helps us with the algorithm and helps more film fans to discover the show. We're also monetized. If you want to get your chat questions definitely read on stream, you can always send us a super chat, which will help us keep the show going. Every cent helps. If you're watching on Twitch, you can gift us a free sub on Amazon Prime with your Prime membership, but getting subs on Twitch is always appreciated, and it helps to follow us on there as well. We also have an audio feed, which is available wherever you download podcasts, if you prefer to listen to podcasts rather than watch the stream. That's updated usually the same day we stream, but watching on YouTube and Twitch is the best way to get the show first, live as it happens. If you want to support us with a monthly donation and get access to all of our after parties forever, which go patron only after we do them, you can become a patron at patreon.com/movie night extra. Link is in the description for that. It really helps us keep the show going since we do have some expenses to make this happen. We also have a Discord community. Link is in the description for that. We sometimes watch movies we cover on there. We get into conversations about everything from film to TV shows to related podcasts. We even have a Discord channel for memes. It's really fun on there. You can find us on all the social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, and Threads. You connect with us on all of those. Talk to us. We'd love to hear from you. Lastly, we recently made a TikTok at Movie Night Extra where we're putting up short form clips from the episodes. Okay, passing this to Conan so he can tell you about his music and this week's Protonic Reversal. Conan, who's on Protonic this week?
Yeah, so I just had the fine gentlemen of the band Biggin on for their new record, Incomes Too Soon. That was a great conversation. If you're interested in hearing about that, that is currently in the patron queue. Number one, patreon.com/Protonic Reversal, $1 a month for advance access. Mike Baguetta, the guitarist, is that's the next one that's coming out to the general feed. He plays with Mike Watt of the legendary Minutemen, as well as Steve Hodges, who was in David Lynch's band, Mavis Staples, Bob Dylan, played with everyone, that guy. So that's up there as well. Next week, Marissa Paternoster, friend of the show, Adam McKay's favorite guitar player, now in Screaming Females, et cetera, et cetera. So that should be a good time to have her back on. It's been a long time. I think it's pre-pandemic is the last time I had her on, so it's been a long time coming. So much Conan Neutron, The Secret Friends news. Keep an eye out on the internet. I guess why wouldn't you do that? But on Thursday of next week, because pre-orders for Wade Neutron drop then, and we'll be streaming the first single, Who Dares, as well, and that's going to be all over the place. And that is the new record that I have been sitting on like a bird on an egg for it seems like a very long time now.
A year.
Basically almost a year. Yeah, and I'm very excited for people to finally hear it.
Damn.
I've got
I was just joking.
It has almost been a year, actually, and which is a long time for us. We don't usually turn things around a lot quicker. And then we got shows in San Clemente and Los Angeles in 2 weeks. and a whole bunch of Tour DSL finally be able to drop next week. So that I know I've been talking about a long time. I will say this, it will be worth it. And there's a lot of them. So chances are we might be coming near you. Not you, Kristina, everywhere else. We're going to hit the South in fall. So it'll happen.
Just time for my birthday.
It's time for your birthday. Also, part 2 of the records of 1995, the Records by Year show that I do with Jason Miles on the Pop Life. I don't know, a sublet. I don't know what it is of This Is Revolution that are weirdly popular. We're doing part 2 of that. We didn't really we actually didn't feel like we had enough time to cover it, so we split it off into a second part.
If you ever cover like 66, 67, 68, or 69, like that's totally your vibe. We did one on the 60s, and I want to say it was 68, but Jason was kind of bummed. Like Jason didn't. He is anti-60s, I think, for some reason. But anyway, we can talk about this off air. But I can probably talk about to do another one, and because we were talking about having some guests on. I kind of like, honestly, people seem to just like it was just him and I going, but like I like the ones that have guests as well. So, but anyway, that's if you're a fan of that show. A lot of people from this show actually come over for those episodes. So take of that what you will. If only the other way around was true, right? Anyway. Caterwaul, of course, coming up in May as well. That is it's May 23rd, 24th, 25th, 26th, Minneapolis, Minnesota. We're dropping the schedule and single day tickets on Monday. So I cannot reveal what that is, but we can talk about it on Sing Sing because it'll be fresh news there. But if you're fans of that kind of thing, you will not be disappointed. Let's put it that way. All right, and I believe that's it. So yeah, stay tuned next Thursday, and there's going to be so much. I'm going to need like a whole show just to talk about my plugs, apparently, which I practically do already. Yeah.
Kristina, what do you got?
Yeah. Well, for those who don't know, my Uma finally passed away. Oh. God rest her soul. She was a good woman, and she made me the young lady I am today. I'm her little Liebchen. But this weekend after work tomorrow, because we got to work tomorrow, I'm doing a subathon until Monday night where I'm just going to, we're going to watch Dark Shadows. We're going to do a lot. Barnabas is now a vampire again. My poor boy. Got a lot of content to go over to. And the subathon is for every 20 subs I receive, I will do a dab of the bomb from Hot Ones, the wing sauce.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, which I doubt I'm going to get a lot of 20 subs, but I think people want to see me like
if they want to see you suffer, boy.
Yes.
I think I'm in the right business.
Hey, Vio can put a bunch of eggs on her head, then I can handle some hot sauce, some wing sauce.
That's your metric, huh? Okay.
Yeah, so okay. Yeah, it's that's kind of all I got really going on. Oh, I was on a debate lord panel on Wednesday night. I was one of 2 lefty chicks. I was the only one left that was female and on the left. I didn't get to the top 3 to win, but I was cool. So that was a lot of fun. I'm going to be doing more of those.
I know y'all explained what all that was in the after party on Tuesday, but it sounds very complicated.
Yeah, we pulled it off. And a lot of people were like, we'll keep this chick on. I'm like, why? My answers are not good.
Come on, get off the island,
kid. It's time, kid. Yeah. Don't stress it.
But it was like a test run. My fellow streamer, Enemy Charlie, who loves film, she should also come on this pod as well, was moderating it, and we were like the guinea pigs, and she's going to do more of them. So it was a lot of fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
But I want to say the Josh thing, I like the new logo. I think the new logo looks good.
It looks like film.
I feel like our previous logos have all been pretty complicated, and people want to like really zoom in to see what it is. And I like that this is simple. It's a piece of film. It says movie night extravaganza. You get. I feel like logos are better when they're simple, to be honest.
Yep.
I like it quite a bit.
But
so there.
Also, too, Forrest and I are going to be starting a political podcast with Ray Bonna and my friend Visora Official, so that should be fun.
Yeah, we're trying to figure it.
The last name's Official?
We're doing logistics to figure that out right now.
What the fuck is the name going to be?
Yeah, we gotta brainstorm.
Something with DEI in it. I don't know.
the woke DEI podcast.
So what's the format of that going to be? It's going to be like
we just shoot
live
the
show
shit.
well, but it's going to be live and podcasted later, or it's going to be more structured, or what?
I mean,
I guess tune in to find out. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, what do I know?
Yeah. I would probably say recorded and then
my papal spies have not informed me of this development.
Probably recorded and then posted later, but I don't know. I mean, it depends on I guess what everybody wants to do. But like I liked doing that when I was doing the red flag one because I was like I say things that when I spout off that we could cut later. But yeah, what was I gonna say? I don't know. Oh yeah,
you mentioned the Oscar stream, so that's something people should set their.
We'll plug it again.
Set their calendars for. What am I even saying? Whatever, you know.
Yeah, whoa. We got more views than the actual Oscars that one year.
That's right. Yeah. Set your clocks, mark your calendars. There you go.
I always wondered, like, were there people
mark your clocks and set your calendars?
Were there people that got like really, really mad and they were like, "This isn't the Oscars"?
Yeah, and they clicked out, and then everything. Yeah,
I think there was someone. Wasn't there someone that said that's like how they discovered the show, though? I mean, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah,
we had like 1,000 people watching at once.
Great.
You're like,
and a lot of them stuck around. Like after 5 hours, I think there were still like 200 people watching, and I was like, "How?" Like,
wow,
thank you.
It's impressive.
Yeah. So. We should plug one more time that we're going to be streaming after this, and we're going to be running through with my leaky brain right now because I've been up for too long.
Brutalist, Amelia Perez, and a Complete Unknown. It's going to be very incisive, very focused, and timed reactions to those movies because we don't have the ability and or interest necessarily in doing a full episode on them. So
yeah. I mean, some of them I think ability, some of them interest.
Right, exactly. So people that have been clamoring for us to cover those movies. Well,
here's
you're gonna get it.
Clamoring Cameron.
Right, clamoring Cameron, exactly. Then you have those will be that'll be the place to find it. And of course, if you join the Movie Night Extravaganza Patreon, you can access that at your leisure at any time.
Yeah. So, Christine, final thoughts on the Conclave.
Well, as a former Catholic, I thought the movie was really interesting, and it took us into something that we don't know anything about. We just see what comes on the outside of picking a pope. It's like white smoke. That's it. We don't know the full process. So this film was actually rather refreshing for me, and to be like more understanding of like how the politics of the Catholic Church go into when they're picking a new pope. I mean, it's a dudes fuck movie for older dudes, dudes being dudes type of movie. And
did you say dudes fuck or dudes rock?
I said dudes fuck because that's basically what it is.
I think you're setting up unreasonable expectations of this movie for people, but okay.
Well, I mean that's the point. But it's a good it's a good that guy movie. Like, oh, you recognize a lot of actors that and love.
Brokeback Popin.
Yeah, Brokeback Popin. There you go. So yeah, if you're a Catholic and you're like on the fence, it's not an offensive movie.
Yeah, it's definitely not anti-Catholic, at least. Like,
that's absurd.
Keep your panties on. Like, just chill the fuck out, Catholics. It's fine.
That's what I said to the last cardinal. Keep your panties on. This is not a
right.
movie.
Exactly. Yeah. Calm it down. Calm it down, Cardinal.
That would be like I could see this being like a prestige series, The Horny Pope.
Isn't that what was that?
Wasn't there with Jude Law?
Yeah. I was gonna say I think that exists. I think so. I think he does it.
I know.
I don't know if he does it or not.
I know I'm the Pope, but I'm feeling frisky. The frisky Pope.
Frisky Pope. All right,
Conan.
Yes.
Time for your final thoughts, and if you get them right, we will send up white smoke.
There you go. Well, like I said, I love a good procedural process story, and that's exactly what this is. You got a cavalcade of character actors, all bitchily working with and against each other as alliances are made. It's a lot of cattiness. Alliances are made and broken and reformed, and they try to come to an agreement on a new pope, and it doesn't really matter what the end result is because it's just a good process story. It's a good allegory, like I said, about how those that seek power rarely deserving of it, and it's very talky. It's compelling. And I think it's twisty in a way that's not indulgent, and I appreciate that. I think there's some great filmmaking craftsmanship. Some of the shots here are astounding. They're wonderful. It's great production design.
Yeah. Wait, no, finish your thing. I just one shot that I forgot to mention is the one where they've been all smoking outside because it's really stressful, and then there's just a pile of cigarette butts.
This pile of cigarette butts, and like things like the umbrellas. The umbrellas, like that was like a super cool looking. But yeah, it's great production design, very strong screenplay. I think this is very heavily weighted to win in screenplay, and I think that's accurate. I think it's very good. I think it takes a long time to get going. I'm not super crazy about the end, but I think it works, and I liked it better on rewatch. It would be the most shocking and fitting ending of the award season if it does win Best Picture, for what I can only assume is obvious reasons if you've seen the film. But yeah, I thought it was a cool one to discuss, and it was interesting. And I'm down for, not every movie has to be the greatest movie in the history of mankind. Sometimes it's nice just to talk about a good movie. I think that's cool.
I mean, it would be interesting.
Just kidding.
Like, I feel like a lot of conversations about like trans identity or gender identity, right? Like the intersexing, right? Like that we all have different bodies and genetics and stuff, like kind of disproves these binary concepts of male and female. And like, it would be very interesting for this movie to win for the reason that, they literally do have the intrinsic conversations about, and he decides then not to remove his, like, the ovaries and stuff that he has inside of him. Because, he's like, this is how God made me. And it's like a very poignant moment. And I just have to think about Trump being like, there are only two gender, like freaking out, like
right.
This fucking 2-gender executive order or something, and like I don't know, that'll be like, because Trump watches and live posts the Oscars too, and
so one could argue that amongst the Best Picture nominees that it's not even the conservative pick amongst that would really be complete unknown, frankly.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's interesting that even the movie that's like catnip for like dads and grandpas, like it still managed to be a little bit challenging.
Well, I mean,
I think
this movie has politics. A Complete Unknown is devoid of any resembling politics. Like,
anyway, more on that in the after party. We'll talk all about it.
I have so many thoughts on it. That movie in particular.
We will speak at it at length.
This is the most offended I've been at a recent movie.
Don't tip your hand too hard.
Dare make Pete Seeger